Welcome to Search the Scriptures. This is a time when we just come together and day by day go through God's Word. We're a 3-year Bible study program, and today we are in John's Gospel. This corresponds to studies number 21 and 22 in Alan Stibb's book, Search the Scriptures, and we are covering John chapter number 11 today, beginning with the first verse and going through the 44th verse, which covers the story of the resurrection of Lazarus from the dead. Lazarus and his two sisters, Mary and Martha, were dear friends of Jesus. They lived just outside of Jerusalem in the small village of Bethany. And Jesus receives word here in the opening part of chapter number 11 that his dear friend Lazarus is sick. When the messengers come and proclaim this to Jesus, Jesus says in verse number 4, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." Now, when Jesus says this, it is most likely that Lazarus is already dead. We are told later that Jesus waits 2 whole days in the next verses there before he goes to where Lazarus is, even though he loves Mary and Martha and Lazarus very much. He waits 2 days before he even begins to travel. Takes another day to travel. When he gets there for the raising of Lazarus, we're told that Lazarus has been dead for 4 days. So when Jesus says this sickness will not end in death, Lazarus most likely is already dead, and he knows that when he says it. Yet he goes ahead and he waits 2 whole days before he ever bothers to go. And then he finally tells his disciples, let's go back in verse number 7 to Judea. Well, they were leery of this because after all, the last time Jesus was there, the people were trying to kill him when he was there in the region, and they just wanted to stay there in Galilee. But Jesus said, no, we need to go back there, for in verse 11, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. The disciples are saying, well, if he's just asleep, it's no big deal. He'll get better. He just needs to sleep it off. But Jesus, when he was talking about sleep there, was just talking about the temporary condition that he believed that Lazarus was in. The Lord can see the end from the beginning. He can see the greater purpose and the greater things that can happen and the struggles and the difficulties that we go through. And he knew that this was just a temporary state that Lazarus was in, the state of death. And really it's temporary for every single one of us. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So he goes on and explains to the disciples in the 15th verse, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I'm glad that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. He was glad that he wasn't there. He was glad that Lazarus died. Wow, it seems kind of strange, but once again we have to remember he sees the big picture. I think the greatest thing that we could learn from this story is that there is a bigger picture than just what's happening in the moment. We get so stuck in the moment in our culture. We want our food in the moment. We don't want to wait more than about 30 seconds at the drive-thru. We want everything to happen right now. We want all of our needs to be taken care of instantaneously. We get mad in the moment in traffic when somebody doesn't immediately go when the light turns green. We are moment by moment people and want everything now. And the Lord in this story just reveals that there is a bigger picture than the here and now. I love this exchange that happens with Martha when Jesus comes to the scene. Mary stays back at the house with all of the mourners, and Martha goes out to greet Jesus. And she says to Jesus in verse number 21, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. I think that is a wonderful statement that Martha makes. You know, I know if you'd have been here, he wouldn't have died. But I nonetheless still believe in you. She wasn't really declaring here that she expected Jesus to raise Lazarus from the dead, because she didn't. That was like farthest from her mind. What she was really stating here was, even though you weren't here for me, I know that you're still here. I know that you're still able. I know that you're still capable of doing great and mighty and powerful things in people's lives and in my life as well. If we could have that kind of faith, that when the Lord isn't there for us, when things do go bad for us and don't go our way and everything falls apart, I want you to think about this situation. For 4 days, they had been in upheaval over the death of their beloved brother Lazarus. Their world had fallen apart. It appears that Lazarus maybe was taking care of these 2 sisters of his. And now everything is gone. We don't know how long they watched him suffer in sickness, but for 4 days they've been suffering because of his death. The mourners still there at the house, and they were in anguish. But Martha said, but I still believe. I still believe in you. Do you still believe in the Lord when he lets you down? Do you still believe in the Lord when things don't go your way? In the midst of your grief and sorrow and struggle and pain, can you still believe in the Lord? Because that is the type of worshipers that he is looking for. And when Martha makes this declaration, he says to her, your brother will rise again. And she says in the 24th verse, well, I know that he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And Jesus makes this powerful declaration in the 25th verse. I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And I want you to listen to her response. Again, her response wasn't thinking about Lazarus rising from the dead that day in just a few moments. No, she said, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come into the world. Wow, what a powerful declaration that Martha makes. We always think of Martha as the one that was too busy in the kitchen, didn't have time to sit at the feet of Jesus. And we got a lot of bad things to say about Martha, but let's say something good about Martha today. When everything was falling apart, when she had a house full of mourners and everybody was in grief, she came out to Jesus and she said, I know if you'd have been here that he wouldn't have died, and I don't blame you. I believe in you. I believe you're the Christ. I believe you're the Son of God. And I just hope that from this study today, we know just shortly after this, Jesus goes to the tomb. They roll the stone away, cries out in a voice for Lazarus to come forth, and Lazarus comes walking out of the grave. He says, take the grave clothes off, loose him. And I just think this is a powerful illustration of the compassion and love that Jesus has. The shortest verse in the Bible, John chapter number 11 and verse number 35, Jesus wept. Why did he weep? Because he's moved the suffering that these people were going through. He's moved by what you're going through, and he's especially moved if you still believe in him, even in your pain, even in your struggle. Mary and Martha both said, if you'd have been here, we know he would have lived. We still believe in you. Do you still believe in the Lord today, even in spite of the struggle you're going through? If you do, just know that at the right hand of the Father, the Lord is moved with compassion. Perhaps he's weeping over you today. And perhaps what you thought was long dead will come to life again. Keep the faith. In spite of everything that's going on around you, you never know what God might do today. I hope this study's been a blessing to you, and I hope God richly blesses the rest of your day.